Hey there, my name's Randall, and today I'm going to take you on a walk through the beautiful Appalachian wilderness in search of 4 wild plants and herbs that you can forage for at home. Now, these 4 plants grow in relative abundance and are very easy to identify, so they make perfect starting plants for people who are new to foraging. Before we head out on this beautiful spring day, it needs to be clear that you should never consume a plant or mushroom unless you're 100% certain of its identification, or else you might get hurt. With all that in mind, let's head out and see what we can find. It's currently spring ephemeral wildflower season here in Boone, which is the period of time when the trees have not put out their leaves, allowing light to penetrate down to the forest floor and hit the understory. Now this is the perfect time for wild flowers to come up and bloom, complete their life cycle, and die back. But it only lasts for about a couple weeks out of the year, meaning it's very ephemeral, hence the name spring ephemeral wildflower season. Now if you have the good fortune to be able to get out and forage or even hike during this time, try to get to know all these beautiful little flowers that are only here for a few weeks to a month out of the year. Here we have one of my favorite spring ephemeral wildflowers, Erythronium americanum, also known as the yellow trout lily, or the yellow dogtooth thallet. Now, this isn't going to be on our list of wild edibles for today, even though technically it is edible. The reason why I'm not putting it on the list is because it's an emetic. So while it won't hurt you, it will induce vomiting, which I wouldn't say that's a choice feature for something you'd put on 4 wild edible plants. So consider this a little bonus, and if you ever go on a walk during spring ephemeral wildflower season, keep an eye out because it's no doubt one of the most handsome flowers that you'll find. Right here we have our first wild edible for today, which is no doubt my favorite on the list. And unfortunately today we're not talking about witch's butter, we're talking about Laportia canadensis, a kind of stinging nettle, more commonly known as wood nettle. Now those of you at home who have had an experience with stinging nettle before are probably shocked that I'm handling the plant. After all, it's covered with thousands of little sharp spines, but actually when the plant is young like this and less than about 6 inches tall, the plant can easily be handled and is in fact delicious and edible. Nettles, all of which are members of the Urticaceae family of plants, are amongst the world's most nutrient-rich wild plants, with 33% of the dry weight of the plant being protein, 9% of the dry weight being fiber, and with over 220 milligrams of iron per 100 grams of material, along with 160 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams of dry material. The nutritional value of this plant is made even more impressive when you consider the high level of carotenoids found in wood nettle, which are shown to help fight cancer in the body, as well as improving the body's level of vitamin A. Now, with such a nutritionally dense plant, it is no wonder why it's covered in all these sharp, painful little hairs, because without them, the herbivores that know how valuable this plant is as a resource would have absolutely obliterated it. Stinging nettle has been used medicinally for thousands of years, with the earliest evidence of use indicating that ancient people used the sting of all things in a practice known as urtication, which is to deliberately prick yourself with the spines. The term urtication makes a lot of sense when you remember that nettles are in the Urticaceae family. Urtication was used primarily to stimulate paralyzed or arthritic limbs and digits and to alleviate symptoms of arthritis. Further medicinal use of this plant includes extracts being used to treat rheumatism, eczema, spring allergies, and once again arthritis. Modern research even indicates that nettle and nettle extracts aid in the treatment of benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, which is a common, non-cancerous form of inflammation in the prostate which the majority of men will face in their lives. This particular member of the Urticaceae family, the wood nettle, is fairly easy to identify and is commonly found in damp, shady areas, such as by a woodland stream. Wood nettles have wrinkly, serrated leaves growing oppositely from a central stalk. They grow in colonies connected by underground rhizomes, which are roots connecting multiple plants. Another very helpful identification feature is the silica-tipped spines, which stiffen with age, which allows them to break off into the skin of anyone unfortunate enough to brush up against them, injecting a mixture of irritating chemicals. Here you can see the underground rhizome of the stinging nettle, and you can see that it's going towards this one right here. So it's likely that these two plants are connected and will form a colony with age. However, right now it's early spring, so they're going to stay small like this and the colonies haven't quite sprouted up yet. The entire plant is actually edible, all the way down from the leaves to the stem to the rhizome underground. You can eat all of it. However, my favorite time to harvest it is right now in early spring, when the plant won't actually sting you, especially because this is when you can eat the plant raw. Now, the leaves of wood nettle, when you eat it raw, taste indescribable. It's a very rich, hearty flavor, though I most liken it to cucumber. Now, in the late summer, it is still edible. However, you're going to need to wear gloves and maybe bring scissors in order to cut up the plant so you don't get stung. And when you want to cook those, first you want to dry out the leaves and then grind them up. That way you can deactivate the stingers and then cook them for good measure. The most important thing to know when you're harvesting stinging nettle in the early spring is to try to be conservative about how you pick them. You don't want to dig up the rhizome of every single plant, because then you're going to obliterate it from a region, and then your area won't have stinging nettle, which, believe me, that's probably a bad thing, even though you might not want it there. I always try to limit my picks to about every few feet, only picking a couple of the plants. Be sure to leave some of them as to not destroy the colony. And if I'm just taking leaves, don't take all the leaves off of one nettle, unless you're going to harvest the whole thing anyway. The next wild vegetable on our list is going to be fiddleheads. Now, fiddleheads are young ferns before they furl out like this, so they look a bit like this. Now, you can tell that they're fiddleheads because they're curled up, and usually you'll find them growing with fully grown ferns, which are available in early spring. Now, these particular fiddleheads are the fiddleheads of the Christmas fern, also known as Polysticum acrosticoides. When you're looking for fiddleheads, try to look in the early spring in sloped, shady areas. So right here we have a northward-facing slope, and as you can see, it is absolutely covered in Christmas fern. But you probably don't see many fiddleheads. That's because we're currently looking in early May. Now, early May, you can still find fiddleheads of different kinds of ferns. However, most of your fern picking should be done in March and April if you want to maximize how much you can take home. But as you can see up here, if we had gone here early April and even March, this would have been a great place to look for fiddleheads. Right here we can see a really good little area of fiddleheads, and if I were going to harvest any today, the ones right here, here, and here, where you can't really see the leaves and they haven't all the way unfurled, would probably be my best bet. All these curled up ones, you don't want to pick every single one of them, because then you might kill this patch. And fiddleheads are already a fairly sought after wild edible, especially in the spring, so you don't want to be the person that goes by and wipes them out of an entire region. So if I were going to pick from this patch, pick 2, maybe 3 of them. Don't pick any more, because that could be to a great detriment to the plant. Nutritionally speaking, fiddleheads have a high amount of vitamin C, nearly as much vitamin C gram for gram as a lime. They also have high amounts of vitamin A, potassium, and niacin, an essential vitamin that aids in the production of energy of the body and helps regulate the immune system. You're going to want to be sure you don't eat your fiddleheads raw, however. Once you take them home, I would steam them for 10 to 20 minutes, and then afterwards I always saute them in garlic and butter. Now, a lot of wild edibles you can eat raw. I wouldn't recommend fiddleheads because fiddleheads have certain compounds which could harm you if not deactivated by cooking them first. Now, once again, my favorite way is to cook them with butter and garlic, and just like every other wild plant on this list, it's really hard to describe the exact specific taste. However, I'd say it's close enough to soybeans. Our next wild plant is one that is well suited towards beginner foragers because it grows so abundantly because it's invasive that you will never need to limit how much you harvest, and it is so easy to identify you do not have to be afraid about misidentifying it. Right here, Alaria petiolata, also known as garlic mustard. Garlic mustard was brought over to the United States in the 1800s by English settlers for use as a food, an herb, and a medicine. Because garlic mustard is invasive, it grows very aggressively, and native animals are not interested in eating it, modern populations of the plant have absolutely exploded into where we see today, where it grows absolutely everywhere. And in fact, once you're familiar with the plant, you'll have a hard time going around without seeing it. It is a biennial plant, meaning it takes 2 years to complete its life cycle. In these 2 years, garlic mustard secretes a chemical through its roots which kill native ground cover and mycorrhizal fungi, leading to the endangerment of many native plants, animals, and fungi. What makes this even worse is that if the plant fails to become pollinated, it will self-fertilize, meaning that even a single plant can turn into a large patch. Areas with a large population of white-tailed deer are stricken with garlic mustard even worse, as the deer will eat native ground cover and avoid garlic mustard, removing any competition for the plant. Garlic mustard has been used traditionally for multiple things, such as an herb, an ingredient for the seasoning of fish, and a substitute for garlic. It also holds significant medicinal value, serving as a diuretic in the treatment of gangrene, as well as for healing ulcers. It also has some of the highest concentrations of vitamin C out of any wild plant, as well as stimulating the immune system. Finally, garlic mustard has shown significant effectiveness in promoting a healthy circulatory system by improving heart health and reducing the levels of unhealthy cholesterol in the arteries. When harvesting garlic mustard, you can pick the leaves. The larger leaves taste more strongly of garlic and the smaller ones less strongly of garlic. And you can use these leaves in salads. You can dry them out and grind them up and use them as a substitute for garlic. My favorite way is to actually grind them up and add feta cheese and use them as a pesto. Now, another part of the plant that you can use is the root. Now, if you grind up the root, it makes an incredibly convincing substitute for horseradish. Like I said, garlic mustard grows absolutely everywhere, especially in disturbed areas. It is incredibly invasive. I find it growing in parks, in the woods, near my apartment. Even when I'm driving down the road, it's growing all over the roads. So you are doing the world a big favor by trying to acquire a taste for this plant, which is medicinal and healthy. Our final wild edible plant for today is going to be one that you are no doubt familiar with, as it grows absolutely everywhere. Taxocarum officinale, also known as the common dandelion. Now, the common dandelion grows everywhere, and it is probably the easiest to identify plant on the list and the easiest to find. In fact, it grows so abundantly that many humans consider them to be a nuisance for their lawns and their parks. But you couldn't be more wrong than consider this little plant a nuisance, as it is delicious, full of nutrients, and medicinal. In fact, it is probably the most abundant natural medicine found in North America. So, why should I convince you that you should eat what you, likely until now, consider to be a pesky yard weed? Well, what if I told you that dandelions are absolutely loaded with antioxidants, which remove free radicals from the body that damage cells? In addition, the common dandelion's root has been shown in clinical trials to dramatically slow the growth of cancer cells in the liver, colon, and pancreas. Dandelion also serves as a diuretic, which reduces swelling and helps lower high blood pressure. Finally, this amazing little plant helps lower the amount of unhealthy fat in the liver, improving its function. The harvesting of this plant is easy, because you can eat the whole thing, but the most commonly consumed parts of the plants are the yellow flowers, the low-lying leaves, and the root. The flowers and leaves are commonly mixed into salads. You can make a refreshing tea out of the flower petals, and the root can be dried and used to make teas or for making medicinal extracts. Without a doubt, my favorite way to use dandelion is in the making of homemade dandelion wine, which can be done with the flower heads. It is absolutely delicious, refreshing, and it even helps you get some of that medicine and antioxidants into you. Well, that'll be it for the 4 wild plants that you can forage for at home. I'd like to thank you for coming on a walk with me today, and until next time, I'll see you later.